It's April the 13th, 2022, and our reading today in the book of Esther is in chapter 8. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai, and Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. Esther again pleaded with the king, falling at his feet and weeping. She begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she arose and stood before him. "If it pleases the king," she said, "and if he regards me with favor and thinks it the right thing to do, and if he's pleased with me, let an order be written overruling the dispatches that Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family?" King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, "Because Haman attacked the Jews, I've given his estate to Esther, and they've hanged him on the gallows. Now write another decree in the king's name on behalf of the Jews, as seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring, for no document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked." At once the royal secretaries were summoned on the 23rd day of the third month, the month of Sivan. They wrote out all Mordecai's orders to the Jews and to the satraps, governors, and nobles of the 127 provinces stretching from India to Kush. These orders were written in the script of each province and the language of each people, and also to the Jews in their own script and language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes, sealed the dispatches with the king's signet ring, and sent them by mounted couriers who rode fast horses, especially bred for the king. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force of any nationality or province that might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers, riding the royal horses, raced out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was also issued in the citadel of Susa. Mordecai left the king's presence wearing royal garments of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city, wherever the edict of the king went, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of other nationalities became Jews, because fear of the Jews had seized them. Amen. Well, as is the case with so much of the Bible and so many of the individual stories, even of the Old Testament, this is a story of salvation in Esther chapter 8. And again, salvation for God's people is never just a question of what we are saved from. It is also what we are saved unto. So the execution of Haman is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, whichever way you want to look at it, because there's so much more now that will unfold and be unpacked as a result of that decisive victory and deliverance from their enemy. Verses 1 to 2, Haman's estate is gifted to Mordecai. Haman was a fantastically wealthy man, and all of those goods and treasures and services, they all flow now to Mordecai. And the king even gives him his signet ring. Yes, he had given it to Haman to make edicts and decisions, and the signet ring would be the seal on documents indicating royal authority. Now that is given to Mordecai. Verses 3 to 8, Esther makes another request to the king. It's really the same one, but she's reinforcing it, that not only her family, Mordecai, the Jewish company around her should be saved, but now all of the Jewish people throughout the whole empire. And for that to happen, there has to be a legal dimension to it. Haman's evil plan, which had been legally enforced through documentation, that's why he needed the king's signet ring, and so on. All of that now has to be legally repealed. And another decree has to be passed with the authority and the agreement of the king. And that's her request. Yes, she has been saved, her family's been saved, Mordecai's been saved, but now it's all the Jews, all of God's people. Verses 9 to 14, therefore, that new decree is written, it's enacted, it's taken throughout the totality of that vast Persian empire, the greatest, biggest empire the world had ever seen up to this point. We're reminded in verse 9, I think it is, about the 127 provinces. Yeah. The book opened with that thought, didn't it? The vastness of this magnificent empire. Well, now it is vast, but an edict has been passed, the king is behind it, and the edict is to do with the salvation of the Jewish people. And that's how we end, verses 15 to 17, from being despised and rejected, weak and persecuted, not only Mordecai, but all of the Jews. Now the Jews are accepted, they are legitimate, they have legal standing, they have the support and defense of the king and all his courtiers and army and personnel. No wonder by the end of it, we see these people now joyful, powerful, triumphant, and others who would want to threaten them, the typical anti-Semitic movements, which are so typical of this world. At this time anyway, those people, their enemies, are cringing in fear before them. This is the story of Queen Esther and her people. It is a salvation story. Salvation which is not just what we are saved from, but what we are saved unto. This Easter, we will be remembering an even greater salvation story of King Jesus and his people. And again, as I read Colossians 1, 12 to 14, think what we are saved from, but also what we are saved unto, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in the kingdom of light. For he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins.